Okay, let me introduce each one of them to you briefly. We are very pleased and very privileged to have with us Ambassador at Large Ong Keng Yong. Mr. Ong Keng Yong is Ambassador at Large in the Singapore Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Singapore's non-resident ambassador to Iran. He is concurrently Director of the Institute of Policy Studies in the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy at the National University of Singapore. He was, as we all know, Secretary General of ASEAN from January 2003 to January 2008. Ambassador Ong Keng Yong.
Well, thank you, Yung Yuk, for the introduction. I think we are running rather tight on time, so let me go straight into my presentation so that we can have more time for questions. I have prepared some slides, but I think Dr. Suraket has covered the whole subject so comprehensively. And maybe this slide is just to keep you awake. Yeah. But let me just quickly make one point to start off. Today we have ASEAN, 10 countries. But when we first started, it was not like that. It was only half Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and Philippines. So over the last 40 years, we have the 5 additional countries, Brunei, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, and Cambodia joining. Cambodia only joined ASEAN in 1999, formally. So actually, if you look at it, ASEAN as we know it today, as 10 countries in one regional organization, started actually only in 1999. And this is important because sometime in our work in the ASEAN meetings, many of the delegation from Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, even sometimes Vietnam, will say that they were late entrants into the organization, and so some of the agreements signed before they enter ASEAN, they would need more time to understand the principles and the working. And this contribute to some delay in our implementation of many of these agreements. Now, we are now 10 countries, and this is ASEAN. The other point that I want to make today is that ASEAN first started basically as a political body. At that time, in 1960s and 70s, you remember we have the Vietnam War, we had the Cold War, we have many, many other challenges in the world. And many different countries have to make decisions, whether to be with the Soviet Union, whether with China, whether with United States of America, or with European countries. So in that moment, in the 1960s, the 5 original countries of ASEAN, which were all anti-communist, felt that they need to come together to find strength in unity, to meet the kind of potential threat to their existence as independent, non-communist countries. However, after they come together, it's very difficult just to rely on politics to generate the various activities for cooperation inside ASEAN. So we use economics. And economic was therefore the basis of pushing the grouping into the habit of consultation and cooperation. Of course, when they meet to talk about economic cooperation, we also have to be aware of the political systems, the political conditions, and so on. And this was how ASEAN developed from the 60s to today. At that time, there were many factors in the 60s, 70s, 80s, which pushed ASEAN countries to coalesce even stronger as a grouping. Yeah, you remember in the late 70s, Deng Xiaoping wanted to redevelop China's economy, and then you have all these other factors. The multinational companies were looking for low-cost production base, and Japan was also shifting their production activity to Southeast Asia. And because of the tremendous increase in oil prices, we have a lot of cash from the Middle East country looking for places to invest. And Europe was intensifying its own economic integration. And President Ronald Reagan came to power in the White House in USA, and he moved very quickly, intensified the globalization drive. So all these basically contribute to ASEAN coming even closer together, because we had no choice but to work together as a grouping. And as I said just now, the focus was on economics. So today, ASEAN is seen as focused on economic integration, political security cooperation, and social-cultural cooperation should follow. If we have started off with just emphasizing political cooperation or social cooperation, we might not achieve what you see today as we know ASEAN. So this is an important point to bear in mind. In the beginning, as we heard Dr. Suraket, we had this very abstract idea of having an ASEAN vision. As we went into the 21st century, ASEAN leaders decided that we must concretize the vision into something more practical and easily understood by the people in ASEAN. So that was in 2003, where we had the idea of ASEAN community building. And we started off with economic integration because it is the easiest thing to do. And by then, in 2003, ASEAN free trade area and other cooperation had already been on the move, although the result was not very good, but things were at least more real than political cooperation or social cooperation. So that was in 2003, the Bali Concord. Number 2 led to the ASEAN community. What is the ASEAN community? Basically, the ASEAN community, if you cannot remember anything else, just remember this today. We are trying to build a house with 3 pillars. Yeah, political security cooperation, economic cooperation, social cultural cooperation. But we emphasize to start off the economic cooperation. But you know, ASEAN had different countries, some well off, some more advanced in economic development, but others not so well developed, like Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia. So the foundation of this house must be to narrow the development gap. So that's why you see right at the bottom of the house this concept of narrowing the development gap. So this is what ASEAN community building is all about. By 2015, we should have this house. Whether we have enough furniture in the house to declare that this is a beautiful house that we all can live in comfortably, there is enough food in the kitchen for you to cook nice lunch and dinner, we do not know. But at least by 2015, we have this house with the 3 pillars. Okay, and all of us are inside. The challenge for us today is to put in all the necessary comfort in this house. Nice living room, nice kitchen, bedroom for 10 different people, yeah, and so on and so forth. Can we do it by 2015? If we follow the plan, I think we can at least have a nice house with some basic furniture and rather good kitchen to survive. But I don't think we can have a very luxurious ASEAN house. Nevertheless, it will be a good house, and if we keep on working, we should be able to make this ASEAN community into very concrete regional body. We say 2015. 2015 apply for the 6th country of Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, and Brunei. The other 4 countries, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Myanmar, have until 2018 to finish the same program. So basically, 2015, we need to have this house. Between 2015 and 2018, when Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar become fully integrated, we should have a lot of beautiful things in this house so that we can have a very luxurious living. Okay, after ASEAN leaders constructed the house, they need to do more because it was not enough just to construct the house. So over the last 7 years, you see ASEAN leaders making initiative to do 3 things. One is to have the ASEAN Charter. ASEAN Charter will give us the legal regime, the rules-based operational method for getting all the 10 countries to work together. And number 2, we have to accelerate the economic integration because, as I say, economic cooperation was the easiest to do among the 10 of us. And the last thing that they need to do is to bring ASEAN to you, to the people. How do you do that? You make it connected. If I want to go from Bangkok to Dalat in Vietnam, or if I want to go from Bangkok to Mindanao in Sulawesi, in the eastern part of Indonesia, I can just book an air flight and I can fly there. Can we do that today? Not possible. Because we are still not having enough air connection. And for the business people, you want to export your goods from Bangkok port to certain part of Philippines, like, you know, to southern Philippines, or from Indonesia, you want to export your coffee to Hanoi, may not be possible, there's no shipping line. So the ASEAN government decided that we must enhance ASEAN connectivity. And this is the reason why the focus is on ASEAN connectivity. So I want to go quickly. This is ASEAN connectivity. This diagram basically shows you what it covers. Yeah, physical connectivity, which is to do with transportation. Institutional connectivity, which is to do with all the agreement. As Dr. Surakia said, we signed many agreements, but many of these are not implemented. If we implement all these agreements, we can get the facilitation, we can get the connection, and people, whether at the business or the employee or businessman or the factory workers or the people in the air travel agencies and airline would know about ASEAN. And then we also have people-to-people connectivity, which is to talk about tourism, education, and culture. Tourism, basically, we say visa-free travel. Every ASEAN citizen can go to any ASEAN country without having to apply for visa. Can we do that? The plans are there. If we implement all this, we can bring the citizens of ASEAN more connected with one another. So this is basically what it involves with regard to ASEAN connectivity. But you see the 3 green boxes. Yeah? To do these 3 area of work is a lot of hard work because all the ministries in the 10 countries and all the officials have to come together to get this thing going. The most important attraction about ASEAN is that we are all, every one of us, even Laos and Myanmar, we are all committed to an open economy. We do trade with other countries. We are prepared to buy and sell, and many investors have put their production facilities in ASEAN countries. So global trade is the strength of ASEAN. And that's why I put here that the opportunities in ASEAN all go back to our open trading system. And we must continue to keep our economy open so that we can get more benefits, more employment, more investment coming from all over the world. So this is a very critical element, and that's why the focus by our ASEAN ministers have been on concluding FTAs, concluding the agreements to open up the respective economy and trading system. However, we have many challenges, and just now Dr. Surakia has given you a very comprehensive overview. I have listed down here a few key elements for me to highlight. Basically, the development gap is still there. And we are bound together by a concept called consensus. Even if one country not feel happy to agree to something, we have no agreement. So the ASEAN way is to constantly persuade one another, constantly telling people that it's all right to sign on and you will get some benefit. Yeah? However, you need a lot of time to convince each other. Number two, we have the problem of Myanmar. But today, Myanmar has a new government, and we hope that things will get better. But we need time to start to untangle the restriction that we have faced in the past 5 years because of the political situation in Myanmar. Then we have the problem in the South China Sea. China say that every island in the South China Sea up to somewhere off the coast of Brunei and East Malaysia belong to China. Of course, because China can say that from the time of the Ming Dynasty, their ship have visited this island. At the time of the Ming Dynasty, there is no Vietnam, there is no Brunei, there is no Malaysia, right? So how can you find a settlement on this? Personally, I don't think you can have a settlement. Anything to do with ownership, property, territory, there can be no conclusion. But the best thing to do, which ASEAN have proposed to the Chinese side, is to work together. Number one, no use of force to settle the conflicting disputes. Number two, we work together jointly. Maybe 60-40, 50-50, 70-30, whatever. But we would work jointly together to exploit the resources in the seas around all our countries. Bilateral problem, you have heard just now, Dr. Suraket talk about border dispute with some countries between Thailand and Cambodia, for example. And the biggest challenge today is what I call the ambitions of ASEAN dialogue partner. Many of these countries, which are the ASEAN dialogue partners, today, they believe that they can use ASEAN to achieve their respective foreign policy objective. In the case of China, for example, they believe that by working with ASEAN, they can control the problem that they have with each of the individual Southeast Asian countries. They will manage it better. But ASEAN as a group, as you heard Dr. Suraket say just now, we have not come to a common position on many of these issues. Yeah? South China Sea, for example, 4 countries, Malaysia, Philippines, Vietnam, and Brunei, they have dispute with China over who owns what islands. But the rest of ASEAN, the other 6, we don't have any dispute with China on these territorial claims. But what do? Do we stick together, or do we let the claimant states go and sort out their own problem in China? So we have to first really come together as ASEAN to try to deal with the relationship with each of these big powers. China is very interested to go forward, and we need to organize our ASEAN position much better. And today, the US is also very keen to work on cooperation with ASEAN, but different countries have different ideas of what is required of the United States. Now, the US president say he will come to attend the East Asia Summit. Some countries say, oh, that's very good. But some other ASEAN countries say, it's not enough just for the president to come to the East Asia Summit. He must also ask his official to participate in all the various sectorial cooperation under East Asia Summit. We have 5 areas, environment, education, trade and finance, disaster management, natural disaster management, and how to control pandemic, the diseases and all that. The American bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. have no time for all these 5. They just say, I let the president go to East Asia Summit, very good already. After he take photo with President SBY and all the other leaders of ASEAN, okay, see you next year, goodbye. But ASEAN country, together with China, Japan, Korea, India, Australia, New Zealand, which are already in the East Asia Summit, they have worked in these 5 areas of cooperation. Yeah? So now the challenge is, how do we, as ASEAN, cooperate and convince the United States of America, thank you for having President Obama to the East Asia Summit. But after the summit, officials have to carry on working in this area, these 5 areas. We don't want to say a lot of areas, but just these 5 established areas. Can we manage it? That's the challenge. Okay? Now, going forward, these are very simple ideas. We have all this national attitude, I call national ego, bureaucratic culture. The culture of civil servant in Thailand today is different from the culture of civil servant in Singapore, for example. But basically, we must recognize what are the problems, what are the differences, and find a way to deal with it. Yeah? the challenge that ASEAN already have is because we don't have enough ASEAN institution. There is only one thing called the ASEAN Secretariat in Jakarta, and the total number of employees there is 300, headed by the Secretary General. Okay, so if you want to promote ASEAN, you must have something in each of the ASEAN country, so that there is someone always telling the media, telling you, you don't forget about ASEAN, we are doing this, we are doing that. But right now, we only have one thing called the ASEAN Secretariat. So going forward, I think we need to have more ASEAN institution. Yeah, maybe we should have more specialized agency dealing with ASEAN matters. Here in Thailand, for example, we have in this university, the ASEAN University Network, which is a network of the 23 universities in ASEAN. Every country has representative in this network. So we can make this network do more with regard to the education agenda. In Singapore, we have the ASEAN weather station, talking about earthquake, talking about floods, talking about bad weather. We monitor the forest fire in the region, so maybe more can be done. And in the Philippines, we have the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity. More can be done. So maybe every ASEAN country should have one ASEAN institution to promote ASEAN. Okay, lesson learned. Yeah, obviously we have to be an open economy. We have to include as many people as possible. Yeah, right now the challenge in ASEAN is that Timor-Leste, East Timor, wants to join ASEAN. Are we ready for ASEAN to have another new member? We do not know. Yeah, is Timor-Leste ready? We do not know. So this is something that we have to discuss among the leaders, among the ministers. And then just now, Dr. Suraket also talked about the lack of big number of meetings. Yeah, since the ASEAN Charter has been established, we now have 700 meetings a year, not 400 as Dr. Suraket said, because now every sector, yeah, even your consumer protection association, they have an ASEAN group now. Yeah, plenty of other bodies are now coming together. So it's good, and we expect more. But we must basically get our people to have a sense of ownership of ASEAN. As I say, we progress because we focus on what is easy to do. So we focus on economic and business. Going forward, we need to now look at other issues like political and security issues. Piracy is now a big problem. Counter-terrorism should be something that we all should work together. Yeah. So these are things which we would have to systematically develop for the ASEAN program. And really, what we need to do is now to implement this, keep the ball rolling, yeah, and develop whatever common understanding we have to make it into something more concrete so that we can derive better result for ASEAN. In conclusion, political will is everything. You heard Dr. Suraket, you heard me now. What can we do? If the country in ASEAN does not want to or do not want to do anything about ASEAN, nothing can be done. So political will is everything. Don't blame the structure, don't blame the design. Yeah? The master plan, everything, they're all good. Yeah? However, it's always the political will. And I think what I have seen so far in ASEAN is that our leaders are always driven by external development, and they think that ASEAN is their only forum that they can come together to develop something concrete as a group. So I believe that they will continue to keep ASEAN effective, but now more willpower has to be exercised so that every part of our government will become ASEAN-oriented. Thank you very much.